Hi everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan and this is the second part of my response to a video made by Jamie and Shaba attacking J.K. Rowling. In this one, I'm going to focus on their tactic of highlighting J.K.'s support for a couple of feminists that Jamie and Shaba disagree with, obviously, in order to claim that she's transphobic. Mainly Maya Forstater, actually, but also Magdalene Burns. So here we go.
J.K. Rowling's essay has given support to a large number of people who are transphobic in their views and now believe that they have her backing in making transphobic comments. From people who are flat out transphobic to people who are trying to legalise their transphobia to actual legal policymakers.
As with gender identity, which I covered in the first video, Jamie and Shaba use the words transphobia and transphobic a lot without explaining what they mean by them. But we can discern from how they use these words that they're not just talking about people who are offended by the very existence of trans people and who wish ill on them. People like these, who, in keeping with the actual meaning of the word phobia, appear to have an irrational fear and hatred of trans people. No, Jamie and Shaba also mean those of us who are arguing that identity is subjective and that ideas about gender are socially constructed and based on rigid, regressive stereotypes and are therefore not as important as biological sex in legislating for women's rights. As much as we might respect the right of all people to present however they like and live their lives free of discrimination and violence, if we don't prioritise gender identity over sex, which is what we're being asked to do when we're told that trans-identifying men are women and should be treated as such in every sphere of life, if we don't prioritise their feelings over ours, then we are transphobes.
She goes on to say that last December she tweeted support for Maya Forstater, and at this point it's really difficult to argue that J.K. Rowling has good intentions.
Well, this is the tweet in question, and actually it's very easy to argue that someone tweeting in support of a woman who was fired for expressing personal opinions that are based on biological truths has good intentions. It is what anyone who cares for women and for free speech would do. For those who don't know the details, Maya Forstater is a tax expert who was a senior researcher at a think tank called the Centre for Global Development. At the end of 2018, they refused to renew her contract because she had publicly expressed her concerns about the negative impact that gender ideology was having on the lives of women and girls, and about proposed changes to legislation in favour of gender self-ID. In December last year, 2019, she took her case to an employment tribunal in the hope of establishing that her right to express her beliefs is protected under the law. She lost, which should be shocking to anyone who cares about free thought and free speech. An appeal against the judgment is scheduled to be heard in spring next year, 2021.
As a very talented author, she knows how to use words well. She's chosen to use her words to suggest that Maya Forstater had transphobic tweets, and all she wanted was affirmation that a belief that sex is determined by biology is protected by law. This is largely misconstruing the facts of what actually happened.
No, this isn't misconstruing what happened. That is, in fact, what Maya Forstater wanted, and Jamie and Shaba say nothing to give the lie to this.
Her transphobic tweets, transphobic, are actually very clearly transphobic.
Just to be clear, only one of the 3 tweets that Jamie shows here is included in the judgment, but they're all worth a closer look. This is the first. What I'm so surprised at is that smart people who I admire, who are absolutely pro-science in other areas and champion human rights and women's rights, are tying themselves in knots to avoid saying the truth that men cannot change into women because that might hurt men's feelings. Tell me about it. So this tweet is described as very clearly transphobic, but we're not told why. And given that the video is framed rather like a lesson in trans rights, there really should be an explanation. Is it the bit about saying that men can't change into women because, according to Jamie and Shaba, manhood and womanhood are less about biological reality than about feelings? Okay, if that is seriously your position, then it's probably quite feasible that those feelings will change. You feel like a man for some years, and then you start feeling all womany, so you start presenting as a woman. And those feelings could change from month to month, week to week, day to day. Happens with Philip Bunce, also known as Pippa Bunce. There can be no greater example of how backwards this whole notion of gender is than a man who changes from his business suit to his little red frock on his woman days. And if saying that makes me transphobic, I'm okay with it. Here is another of the tweets Jamie shows. I honestly don't see the difference between Rachel Dolezal's internal feeling that she is black and a man's internal feeling that he is a woman, i.e. adult human female. Neither has basis in material reality. So what's transphobic about this exactly? It would have been helpful if they could say whether they agree that Dolezal is black because she identifies as such, in which case their position would be consistent, though still wrong, or if they could explain the difference between Dolezal, who is of white European heritage, identifying as African American, and Jamie identifying as a man. Now, this tweet shown by Jamie is one of those that appears in the judgment on Maya's case. Yes, I think that male people are not women. I don't think being a woman stroke female is a matter of identity or womanly feelings. It's biology. Well, obviously, I strongly agree with that, but even if you don't, how is it transphobic? It seems that Jamie and Shubba's disagreement are over the words woman and man, which they want to redefine to include people of the other sex because of something that, as I showed in the first video, they don't actually explain beyond saying it's just something you know up here. And if you're skeptical of that position, particularly in light of the fact that they don't explain it, well, then you're transphobic. One view on the other side of this debate, for want of a better word, that I've seen expressed many times seems to be in conflict with the gender fluctuations or fluidity, they call it, expressed by the likes of Philip Bunce. And this is that a man who comes out as a trans woman has always been a woman or a girl. It's the born in the wrong body trope, the idea that you change your body to match who you really are. And that person who you are doesn't swing back and forth between being a woman and a man. One example that sent my personal peak transing experience into the stratosphere was this tweet by then Pink news writer Josh Jackman about the rapist Martin Ponting, who is now called Jessica something, I can't remember. She, that is Ponting, committed the rape while in a male body. Imagine Ponting's victims being told that. Some of them, by the way, were underage, but that is transgender ideology. Now, going back to Maya's tweet, people of either sex should not be constrained or discriminated against if they don't conform to traditional gender expectations. I strongly agree with that too, but that's not enough for the gender fanatics. It's either total compliance with their ideology or you're a transphobe, evidently. I saw that on Twitter somebody had asked Shaba what was transphobic about the 3 tweets shown in the video, and Shaba's answer was that in them Maya intentionally misgendered trans people. That's transphobic. Well, here are the 3 tweets again. Do you see any trans people being intentionally misgendered in them? This wouldn't be the first time that Shaba has seen something that simply isn't there. As I said in the first video, she said the same thing about JKR's essay. What's even the point of going along with someone's preferred pronouns as a matter of courtesy if people are going to claim that you didn't?
J.K. Rowling makes Maya sound so innocent and like a victim, but this is clearly not the case.
It clearly is the case. Not only did she lose her job because she expressed her views that are based on biological reality, but she's got a pair of bullies like Jamie and Shaba promoting half-truths and falsehoods about her to their 600,000 subscribers. For example,
She also refused to use the correct pronouns for a colleague.
False. This makes it sound as if she had a trans colleague at the Centre for Global Development whose preferred pronoun she deliberately refused to use. And this falsehood was repeated so frequently on social media that one of Maya's former colleagues, Owen Barder, who had been a vice president of the think tank, issued a number of tweets correcting it. And it so happens that Maya engaged with Jamie and Chaba directly about this claim. Which colleagues are you talking about here? She asked, and Chaba responds, you know who we refer to here, Maya. Murray and yourself were both Scout leaders. Meet Gregor Murray, who, like Maya, is or was a Scout leader, which is, of course, a voluntary role in a massive global movement. Gregor Murray was not a leader of the same troop as Maya. He wasn't even in the same country. Murray is in Dundee, Scotland, where he also serves as a local independent councillor, while Maya is somewhere in England. To call them colleagues is ridiculous and gives a very different impression of what actually happened, which, according to the tribunal judge, took place during a dispute on Twitter. In most photos of him, Gregor Murray has the appearance of a gender-conforming man, though he sometimes likes to complement his short hair and trimmed beard with bright lipstick and eyeshadow. Nothing wrong with that. No, really. But apparently he describes himself as non-binary and demands that other people should refer to him as they. And when Maya Forstater forgot to do this in a couple of her tweets about him, he complained to the Scout Association about being misgendered. If you think this attempt by Murray to control another person's speech is over the top, you'd be right. But it is absolutely in keeping with the rest of Murray's entitled behaviour, which once earned him a 2-month suspension from Dundee Council. This was for publicly calling a woman a TERF and a cunt. Lovely behaviour from a local politician. I'm sure all those parents of his scouts are delighted he's such a positive role model. And you get no respect or courtesy pronouns from me, Murray.
She was warned that she was creating a hostile work environment for other employees.
False. She wasn't warned that she was creating a hostile work environment for other employees. Maya herself corrected Jamie and Chubba on this and on other stuff they got wrong soon after their video was posted. So why is it still up there without correction? Do they not understand the effect that spreading false information about someone can have on them or on their lives, or do they just not care? In the next bit, they go on about Maya's beliefs or lack of them. I won't bother showing you all of it, but here's some of it.
Jamie.
Hello.
His biological sex was previously female.
It still is. Are they saying that Jamie's biological sex has changed? I think we should be told.
But his gender identity is as a man. And so, Jamie is seen in society as a man, not as a female, right? But Maya disagrees with this. Maya says that Jamie is not a man at all. He is only female. And Maya believes that her belief in that way is the one that should be protected.
A man is an adult human male, and being male means having followed an evolved developmental pathway towards the production of small motile gametes. And we can't change sex. We can only change how we look and sound. Yes, Jamie has had extensive treatment with hormones and surgery over many years. Does that mean Jamie is a man? Only if you redefine the word man to include women. And define the state of being a man as a feeling and a stereotypical external appearance. Is that belief any more worthy of protection? Why? Again, it comes down to this word gender, which they have not defined, but which they are nevertheless so invested in that they don't mind promoting the idea that people who disagree with them for perfectly sound reasons are transphobic. And they say this in the belief that this will be accepted without question by probably most of their followers. Not a good look. There's just one more thing I want to highlight about what they say about Maya.
I think it's pretty clear that Maya's lack of belief in gender identity fundamentally conflicts with Jamie's rights of having a gender identity and the rights of other trans people.
Yes, if you really did say that. Not believing in this nebulous concept of gender identity conflicts with the rights of trans people. How exactly? We can all identify as whatever we like. What we can't do is compel other people to share in the beliefs we have about ourselves or about anything else. You can have religious beliefs, but you can't force anyone to share them. You might be able to force people to pretend to share them, as they did in medieval times in this country and still do today in some other countries. Is that what you would like to see happen with people's beliefs around gender identity? Which are arguably similar to a religious faith. Sounds worryingly like it. And I would really like to know where Shabbat sees this conflict of rights. because where I see it is when men who identify as women expect to access women's sex-based rights and places where they are not wanted. If you think that trans-identifying men should be accepted as women in all circumstances, then you're prioritizing the feelings of men over women, or males over females, if you prefer.
You can't treat people with less respect just because you don't agree with them.
Well, that's what you're doing. It's hard to imagine something more disrespectful than your video, which contains many inaccuracies and which is, I believe, designed to stir up hatred against J.K. Rowling and other feminists. Now, I defend your right to be disrespectful because I believe people should have the right to speak their mind freely, however offensive other people might find it. What I won't defend is your right to promote harmful falsehoods. Nobody should have to endure that.
J.K. Rowling might be fueling her professional interest in the debate on gender identity, but her interest in and subsequent influence over the attitudes towards trans people causes an immense amount of pain and distress to people who are actually trans and who are now having to defend their rights to people who, before Rowling shared her views, were either neutral or just didn't care. They were oblivious towards trans people's existence. But they're now seeing trans people as a danger and an ideology, and that's not right.
Citations needed. Who are these people who are supposedly now afraid of trans people as a result of anything J.K. Rowling has said? Can you point to anything online that proves these people even exist? J.K. Rowling has expressed a reasoned opinion and empathy for trans people. Jamie and Chubba, on the other hand, have shown no empathy whatsoever for the women and girls who have been caused pain and distress by the elevating of transgender ideology over biological sex. And yes, it is an ideology. That's not to say that all trans people agree with it. Plenty have more compassion and respect for the humanity of women and girls than these two do. Christina Harrison, who is transgender, gave evidence at the tribunal in support of Maya and is quoted as saying that there are trans people who agree with me that the terms biological male and biological female are accurate terms, but are afraid to speak out. Within our community, the idea around gender identity is very intolerant of any dissent. Well, having listened to Jamie and Chubba, I don't find that at all hard to believe. Is Christina Harrison transphobic too? Finally, let's take a quick look at what they say about Magdalene Burns. Yes, they really do go there.
She says months later she followed Magdalene Burns, an immensely brave young feminist and lesbian dying of an aggressive brain tumour, who she wanted to contact and did. She said Magdalene was a believer of the importance of biological sex, and that because of following her, J.K. Rowling experienced greater abuse on social media.
This is a concise and accurate summary of the short paragraph in which J.K. Rowling mentions Magdalene. Why ruin it?
But there is no avoiding the fact that Magdalene Burns did not have the gentle and unoffensive views that Rowling described her as having.
J.K. says nothing about Magdalene's views being gentle and inoffensive. Obviously, they offended people who are enthralled to gender ideology. That's why so many trans activists hated her and celebrated her death, like poor, misgendered Gregor Murray, for example, who posted without a trace of irony that Magdalene's death meant there was a bit less hate in the world. He obviously thought she was a TERF and a cunt.
Burns called trans people perverts.
Oh, come on, she didn't call all trans people perverts. What she said was, you are men who get sexual kicks from being treated as women. And she was obviously talking to the ones who are, well, men who get sexual kicks from being treated as women, also known as autogynephiles. You're not seriously going to deny such people exist, are you? Guess what? Trans people are not a homogenous group. Interesting that she agreed with transgender Blair White on some points, by the way.
Misgendered them, and fundamentally believed that trans women were men.
In other words, she wouldn't kowtow to transgender ideology. She wouldn't go along with a lie.
So to paint her as someone who just had a very gentle sounding belief is wrong.
To suggest that J.K. Rowling painted Magdalene as someone who just had a very gentle sounding belief is wrong. Gentleness isn't the issue here, truth is. What JKR actually said in her essay was that Magdalene was an immensely brave young feminist and lesbian who was a great believer in the importance of biological sex. And didn't believe lesbians should be called bigots for not dating trans women with penises. Like the rest of us, she didn't argue for the exclusion of trans people from society. She didn't try to get trans people she disagreed with silenced or cancelled. She didn't promote or celebrate violence against trans people. And she didn't lie in furtherance of her agenda. Large numbers of trans activists do some or all of these things. We get it. Magdalene's views offended you, Jamie and Chubba. But a hell of a lot of us shared them. And to try to weaponize her in your hate campaign against J.K. Rowling, really, for shame. I'll be back soon with part 3. Thanks for watching. Bye.